Okay, folks, strap in because we are diving into some pretty uncharted territory today.
Yeah, buckle up.
We're tackling a question that sounds like it's ripped straight from the headlines because, well, frankly, it is. Can a convicted felon actually be the president of the United States?
It's a question that really gets to the heart of what American democracy is all about, don't you think?
Yeah.
It forces us to confront our assumptions about the presidency, about the rule of law, heck, even about the political system itself.
Absolutely. And look, we can't just ignore the elephant, maybe more accurately, the former president, in the room here,
Yeah.
right? Donald Trump's 34 felony counts, that whole hush money case. It's the first time ever in U.S. history that a former president has actually faced criminal charges. And that's sending shockwaves through, well, everything, really.
Yeah. And, this isn't just about one guy or even just one election cycle. Whatever happens with all of this could establish a precedent, and a powerful one, for future candidates and elections down the road.
Exactly. It really raises questions about what it means to be president, about the integrity of the office itself, about whether someone who's been convicted of serious crimes can really hold that kind of power, the highest power in the country. And that's why I think this deep dive is so important. You've brought us a really fascinating collection of sources, everything from legal analysis and news articles to, get this, public opinion polls, and even some pretty lively debates on social media.
Yeah, it's a real tapestry of perspectives on this issue, that's for sure.
It really is. And I think our mission today, if we choose to accept it, is to cut through all that noise and give you, the listener, a really clear understanding of what's going on here legally, what it all means, and what the social and political forces at play are, all without getting too bogged down in the weeds, avoiding legal jargon as much as we can.
Yeah, definitely. Clarity over courtroom drama.
Exactly. So let's lay the groundwork. For anyone who hasn't been glued to the news cycle, Trump's conviction, this all goes back to hush money payments made during his 2016 campaign. Those charges, they're serious. 34 felony counts total. It's unheard of in American history, really.
Unprecedented, really, is the word for it. And it's this unprecedented situation that's got the whole country asking, what happens if a convicted felon actually wants to be president? Can they even run? And if they do run, can they actually serve?
So let's dive into this legal maze a little bit here. You would think there'd be like a big flashing neon sign in the Constitution, right? Just a straightforward answer about whether a convicted felon can actually be president.
Right. You'd think it would be like the first thing they thought of, front and center of the Constitution.
Yeah.
But it's more complicated than that.
Okay, so walk us through this. What does the Constitution actually say about a situation like this?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. So the Constitution, it lays out some ground rules for being president, right? You got to be at least 35, a natural-born citizen. You have to have lived in the U.S. for at least 14 years. All that makes sense. But when it comes to criminal history, well, crickets. There's literally nothing in there that says a convicted felon can't run for president or even serve as president.
Wait, really? No, I'm serious. That seems like a pretty big oversight. I mean, we're talking about the presidency here.
It really is kind of a historical quirk. The Founding Fathers, for all their brilliance, they couldn't predict everything. Plus, the world was a very different place back then. Can you imagine the idea of a convicted criminal even trying to be president back then?
Right, I guess not. But it still seems strange that something this important wouldn't be more clear-cut.
I think it shows how much our world has changed, and it creates this fascinating legal gray area, something we're trying to figure out right now in real time.
Okay, so the Constitution is silent on this. Does that mean there's really nothing to stop a convicted felon from becoming president?
Well, not so fast. There might not be a flashing sign, but there are other parts of the Constitution that could come into play. Take the moral character clause, for example.
That sounds ominous.
It's definitely a bit of a legal minefield. The moral character clause, it basically suggests that a president should have good morals, but it doesn't actually say what those morals are.
So it's like a giant loophole.
You could say that. The thing's it's never been tested at this level. So no one really knows how a court would apply it to a presidential candidate who's a convicted felon. Could it be used to disqualify someone? Maybe, but it would definitely be a huge legal battle, that's for sure.
And even if a convicted felon did win, wouldn't there be challenges, actually being president?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. International relations. Do you really think other world leaders are going to be lining up to meet with a convicted criminal? Would they trust them in negotiations?
And what about things like national security? Would they even get access to top secret intelligence?
All good questions. And the truth is, there are no easy answers. We're in uncharted waters, and the stakes are incredibly high.
This is like a political thriller playing out in real life.
With the future of American democracy hanging in the balance.
Okay, so the legal side of things is, to put it mildly, complicated. But what about the court of public opinion? I mean, Americans must have some strong feelings about this, right? We've got that polling data,
I
right?
do. And it paints a really interesting, even a little troubling picture of how public opinion is changing, especially in these hyper-partisan times.
All right, let's get into it. I love a good data deep dive. What are the numbers telling us? Lay it on us. What's the American public saying about this whole convicted felon president thing?
Well, this YouGov poll you gave me, it really tells the story. It shows a huge divide between parties, and honestly, some pretty shocking changes in just a year.
Yeah, those numbers were pretty wild. Give us the rundown.
Okay, so a year ago, only around half of Republicans, a little over half, were okay with a felon being president. But now, that number's up to 78%. It's like Trump's conviction actually helped him with his base, made them even more supportive.
It's kind of like that Teflon Don thing, right? Nothing sticks to him. No matter what happens, his supporters have his back.
Exactly. And this really shows us what's happening in politics right now. It used to be that some things were totally off limits for politicians, things that could automatically disqualify them. But those rules aren't really rules anymore.
It's like someone took the rule book and just tossed it out.
Yeah, pretty much. And this whole situation just proves that it's not about morals or ethics anymore. It's about perception. It's about what people see and hear, especially from the people they already agree with, and they just tune out everything else, legal troubles included.
And let's be real, we can't talk about perception these days without talking about social media. That's been Trump's biggest strength, right?
You got it. Trump knows how to use social media, especially Twitter. He doesn't need the news or anyone else to get his message out. He completely controls his own narrative, and he's got a direct line to his supporters.
Right, and didn't one of our sources call that a new kind of presidential talk?
They did. That article we looked at argued that this is how presidents might talk to the public from now on. Unfiltered, saying whatever they want, however they want. On the one hand, it lets them connect with people directly, which is kind of cool. But on the other hand, it can spread lies and make people even angrier at each other, which is really dangerous.
And that takes us right back to our big question, doesn't it? Could a convicted felon, maybe even one tweeting from prison, actually win the presidency?
It's possible. We really are in uncharted territory here, legally, socially, the whole 9 yards. It would be a first, but to be fair, a lot of what we've seen lately has been a first.
So where does that leave us? More importantly, where does that leave you, the listener? We've gone through the legal stuff, we've talked about what people think, and we've seen how social media fits into all this. It's clear that this isn't over, not even close, and what happens next is super important for our democracy. What should people be taking away from all this?
I think the biggest thing is that we're at a turning point. This whole Trump situation, it's shown us the cracks in our system, in the Constitution, in our government, even in how we treat each other as Americans. It makes us ask ourselves, what do we want in a leader? How do we hold our leaders accountable? And how much power do we want social media to have in our politics?
That's a lot to think about, and honestly, we've only scratched the surface here. This conversation isn't going away, so stay informed, stay involved, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, American democracy depends on people being informed, engaged, and ready to participate.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. If the rules of the game are changing, shouldn't we at least know what the new rules are? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and remember, stay curious.